And then did you want to touch on the mix with the masters? So
Oh yeah.
you were with one of the top names, period. So he's Chris Lord-Alge is known mostly for mixing. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, I believe he started out as a recording engineer. He and his brother Tom started out as recording engineers, and I think they both mix now, and they're both fantastic. Um, I actually recently with an artist I work with, we had a chance to get a song mixed by Tom Lord-Alge, and he's just phenomenal. The mix with the masters thing was actually the same artist I'm referring to. Uh, in 2016, we went down to LA together to start working with a producer down there. This would be the guy with the crazy lava lamp, on two or three songs or something like that, for a pop duo that he was doing at the time. And uh, around that time, I had been every year I would go to the NAMM show, the big music trade show in Anaheim. So basically, we went down at like right at the beginning of January, and NAMM is at the end of January. So I stayed in California for the entire month, and so we worked for a week with this producer and got some tracks down. Um, then he and his music partner went back to Toronto, and I went up to Tarzana, California, where CLA's studio is, and I did this mix with the Masters seminar, and it was a total thrill to be in his studio. You know, you walk in and he's got his gold and platinum records on the wall, and there's one that has like 10. It's an American Idiot plaque, and it's got 10
Diamond,
CDs, and
yeah.
it says presented to Chris Lord-Alge for 10 million units sold of Green Day's American Idiot. I was like, this is ridiculous. And then you go into the room, and he fires up the console and starts going through his mix workflow and all that stuff in the same room and on the same console and the same gear that he mixed all those crazy albums. And it was a really great experience. It was just a 1 day thing, but Mix with the Masters is such a cool little organization. They, you came in and there was like coffee and bagels in the morning, and then they, order in sushi for lunch, and then we all did a dinner after at this Italian restaurant. And that's all included in the cost of the day. And you're there hanging out with CLA and his guys and talking about that, and just having a conversation about mixing and music and technology and stuff like that. It was fantastic. It was great. It was really, really good.
So as we close in on 2 hours,
Woo!
and we wrap up this conversation, are you okay if we do a rapid fire? So just quick question and
Oh,
answers
sure.
through a few questions, because there's a few fan questions I don't want to skip as well.
Oh, wow.
If you could sit down for a conversation with anyone, alive or dead, who would it be and why?
Oh, that's such a tough question. I feel like I always have answers for this, but I never remember.
Because you think outside of
Um,
music too, because you're like, oh, it's anyone. Like
yeah,
it's there's other things you like besides music and other incredible people you think of outside of music, so it's hard to choose.
totally. And there's a lot of people who I would like. I love listening to, and I don't know, like philosophers or people with very cutting edge social opinions, or I don't know however you'd put it, but I'm hesitant to say, oh, I would love to sit down with them, because I go, what they're outputting, I can listen to, and I'm fine with that. I don't necessarily feel the need to. I look at it more as a social thing. So outside of music, that's such a tough question to answer. I don't even know. Um, as far as music is concerned, someone who comes to mind, one of my biggest influences in music, and in terms of a producer, would be Daniel Lanois, and I think he would be cool to. I could see myself grabbing a beer with him and talking shop, talking music and musical philosophy, because I think he's brilliant. He's one of these, he's such a unique um, individual. I would love to, and I feel like he's someone I could just sort of shoot the shit about this stuff with over a beer, which I love to do.
So with him, is it like his history with U2 and Neil Young, or is it him as a musician, or what is his personality? What is it specifically with him that you think would be a great hang?
All of the above, but more like him as a musician because he's such a musical producer, and I'm inspired by his philosophies. I've never done a recording in the style of Daniel Lanois, because the way he does things is it's his own thing. But I've always like gleaned philosophies from him, and been inspired by his by his kind of musicianship and his musicality. So yeah, I swear that I've listened to every interview available on YouTube or podcasts that he's ever been on. I've listened to them all twice, I'm sure. So I'm going to say him, Daniel Lanois. I would love to grab a beer with Daniel Lanois sometime.
What do you think are the top mistakes that newer engineers make in the studio? What would you say are the top, say, 2 or 3 mistakes that you see them when they come in?
I feel like these days, because technology is kids these days, I feel so. I obviously took a very traditional route to pursue audio engineering. I feel like these days the technology is so widely available, and I think that's a good thing overall. I think that's a good thing because there are basically no barriers to creativity and making music and recording music, and there are pros and cons to that, but I like to look at it as the pro side of it. One of the cons of that, I think, is that a lot of people tend to dive right into it. They get a microphone, an interface, some plugins, and they say, "I'm a producer, mixer, engineer." Okay, sure. If you produce your own music and record it yourself and mix it yourself, or other people's, I guess you are those things, absolutely. But I think a mistake is to I don't mean this. I really don't want to sound arrogant saying this, but it's like I took an approach of like I had the mind of a student the whole time. I was like, I don't know anything, and I need to learn a lot. Whereas I feel like there's often people get a hold of the technology and they go, "I'm this, I'm doing it," which is great. A good example of the pro of that would be Billie Eilish and her brother Phineas, if that's how you say his name. I think he's one of these guys that got a hold of the technology, and he's just like, I really think that he's completely switched on. I think he's going to be producing hit albums for the rest of his life. I think he's just one of these people who is so musical and is totally just very brilliant, and took to the technology and just figured it out, and got super creative, and produced some great sounding stuff with it. And so I think that's a really good example. I've gotten tracks to mix from people who have recorded their whole thing themselves, and it's just like a nightmare because things sound so bad. On the other hand, I've gotten tracks to mix from people who do it themselves that sound great. So I think a mistake might be thinking that because you have this technology at your fingertips, that all of the sudden you are you're just ready to go, and you skip over sort of the fundamentals in order to just crank something out. Sometimes that can work, sometimes it doesn't. And I think when it doesn't, you need to be self-aware of that, and go back and try and learn these learn the fundamentals, right? It's like learn the rules before you break them. But I'm not even talking about rules. I'm talking about techniques and tried and true principles of the craft of recording.
I recently did a podcast episode that was my top 15 albums of 2021, and both Phineas and Billie Eilish separately put out albums, and both of them made my top 15 list. So yeah, I believe Phineas is a genius, not just with her music and the writing and the recording and all that, but his music as well. So I think you're right that he's going to be a major
Yeah.
force into the future.
And he's only in his like early 20s.
Yeah, she's been
It's
big.
crazy.
So 29, she's been big for say 3, 4, 5 years, and he's now like 25. And she's now like
It's crazy.
19 or something stupid. I've seen
It's
videos of them performing
bonkers.
together where she's 12, and it's the best thing I've ever heard. Like, her talent's undeniable. She's not just
I
this
agree.
little, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, a few more. So we have a question from Mike Nasso, and
Hey.
your boy Mike. So
Yeah,
we
my
we
boy
were
Mike.
we were thinking, okay, in conversation, just like a first date, you don't want to talk politics or religion because there can be some murky water there. So generally that's a rule. So normally we want to skip politics. This isn't really politics, but because it's our boy Mike Nasso, I'm going to ask the question and you can skirt this however you want. And you're going to see it's not as bad as I just set it up to be. So he just
Okay.
wants to know if you have any thoughts on the cancel Spotify trend that's going on right now because of Joe Rogan misinformation, and then Neil Young and Joni Mitchell removing their music from Spotify, and because those two are so influential, you have India Ari took off her music, and we have almost 400 mutual friends on Facebook, you and I, and most of them are industry professionals. So I'm seeing every day more artists, more producers saying I've canceled Spotify, I'm going with Apple. Like, it's a real thing and I can feel it happening. Do you have any comment on the whole cancel Spotify? And part of it is because they've paid Joe Rogan $100 million, so it's like he's their cash cow, and they believe that maybe he's spitting negative stuff or misinformation. And the other side is all the artists that complain they don't make any money from the streaming, whereas it's $1 billion company and the owner is a multimillionaire. So I've given you a lot there. You can skirt that any way you want without diving too much into politics, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, that would be a huge discussion. I have been following it. I think that there's a lot of conflating the different things. Neil Young's original intent and the Joe Rogan thing and all that. There's I'm seeing a lot of people actually mixing up certain details of this, and I think it's important to stick to the facts. All I'll say about that is it's a huge mess, and Spotify, it's not like people weren't complaining about the Spotify thing before. So hey, it's a free market society, and if Neil Young and Joni Mitchell and India Ari and any other artists want to do that with their material, they are free to, and I can't say they're wrong for doing so. I definitely think that music is valued or undervalued in a very strange way these days. So I would be happy to see things shift, and I'm on the side of the artists when it comes down to it. If there's no artists, I don't get to do what I do, and I want to participate in that side of it. Music has always been a commodity. If you look at how record deals were structured back in the day, it's kind of like, I don't know, it's different economics in different times and different technologies, but it's man, it's such a huge mess. But the whole thing has always been churning in weird ways. It's so multifaceted that it's like, that's a whole podcast on its own. You know what I mean? So yeah. I don't want to dive into it further than that, but it's a big mess. And, but I hope that we see progress out of it. I just hope that we're always progressing, and progress can be a little messy, to get there. And Just because it's messy doesn't mean that it's progress, and it doesn't mean that it's regress. I guess we'll see. I just hope that in individual people communicating in person or over social media and stuff, I just hope that we can get back to respectful discourse and keeping in mind that, at the end of the day, we're all kind of, the majority of people are sort of striving for the same thing: health, happiness, and pursue their hopes and dreams, and human connection and all that. So I really hope we can get back to that, because there's definitely some vitriolic behavior going on right now. So I got to leave it at that. I think about these things all the time.
You skirted that nicely without angering anybody involved, which is good. So what's the best concert you've ever seen?
Ooh, abruptly switching gears here.
Yeah. Rapid fire,
best
baby.
Best concert I've ever seen. I mean, consistently, I've probably seen 9 Inch Nails 8 times over the years.
That's the best concert I've ever seen. 9 Inch Nails. There you go.
It consistently is. It's just fantastic. But another one that pops out that just blew me away was years ago. I went to see Rammstein, and it was so over the top in the best way possible, and that was the single best show I've ever seen. Because of the craziness of it.
What do you think their pyrotechnics budget is?
Well, I have no idea about the economics of pyrotechnics.
Did they have lots of pyro? I think of pyro when I think of Rammstein.
They certainly did, and the ticket, like, this was at the ACC, and the tickets were. It was like $100 for a floor ticket or $80 for like the bowl, and I had So I paid $80 for a ticket, and the other ones were $100. It was a sold out show, and you could see where every dollar of that went. So, I don't know. Yeah, again, I'm not too sure of the economics of a show that size. But if I had paid $100, if I had paid $150, I would have been thrilled with that show. So to me, that, they did it, man. That was like, I was blown away. And there's so many other, there's like a dozen details I could get into as to why that show and its production was so amazing, but I won't. But yeah, that's definitely up there as possibly the top individual show that I've ever seen.
Final 2 questions. Kevin, what's got you most excited right now? Is there anything that just wakes you up in the morning, you want to skip out of bed, life is good? Anything on the horizon that's got you excited?
I got to say, I'm not a huge morning person. I don't do the, and
what gets you out of bed in the afternoon excited?
Oh, okay. I'm not that either. But I feel like if I had to go take a guess, I feel like you might be one of these get up at 5 a.m. kind of guys.
Perhaps.
Yeah. And I totally get that kind of thing. And I've listened to a lot of people talk about their morning routines and their philosophies like that. And I totally get it. That's not for me, but I'm not a afternoon guy into the wee hours either. I try and keep to the daylight more or less. But, man, I'm still excited about music, and I love going to work. Like I said, in a couple days I have this studio session with the Agenda guys, and I'm motivated, and I'll be up and excited for the day, and hopped up on coffee before I even get there, and just ready to go, and that really gets me excited. Exciting sessions, great hanging out with great people, their excitement, other artists' excitement to get to work on their stuff. I love, like I said earlier, I love the craft of what I do. I love like the job, so that excites me, and I like working because I like to earn my keep, and I love doing what I do. So that gets me excited when I have good projects on the go that I can dig my teeth into. I sink my teeth into rather. I get excited for that.
Final question. If you could go back in time and you could sit down with your 16-year-old self, so you got cute little Kevin next to you, and if you could offer advice, so with all these years now of experience and lessons learned and mentorship and failures and success, what advice do you whisper to 16-year-old Kevin Dietz?
That's a big question. To be honest, I would almost rather have a chat with 20-year-old Kevin Dietz than 16-year-old Kevin Dietz. At 16, I was doing 16-year-old stuff. I didn't like get in trouble. I didn't. I was kind of. I didn't. I wouldn't say I was excelling at 16, but I didn't get in trouble. I was just doing average, very average 16-year-old stuff. It was kind of like after high school where I feel like I really got a taste of the adult world and thought to myself, it's like jobs, bills, responsibility. Those things started to pop into my life. Post-secondary education, career stuff. What are you going to do? You're an adult now, so extra responsibilities and extra privileges that come along with that and everything. So,
are you saying you feel like your 20-year-old self would have needed the advice more than the 16-year-old?
Yes. Yeah. I think at 16, I was doing regular 16-year-old stuff, and there wasn't really a problem there. I remember being 20 years old and having a few head scratchers about life, and what advice I would give to my 20-year-old self would be, number one, I would say dig in a little more on your passion now, like really hit this music thing now. But you always look back and you go, oh, there's ways I could have done it smarter. And again, that's like a whole big conversation, but I would have just imparted the wisdom. If I have any wisdom, it's from experience. And when you're young, you have no experience. So I would have just shared some experience, and those lessons could be, I don't know, that's one of those things you got to sit down and like write out a list. But I would just share some wisdom and like some encouragement, but also some details that I'm having a tough time bringing them to mind, but I'm sure that there's details I could have imparted upon 20-year-old me that I look back and I go, I wish I'd done this earlier. I wish if I knew then what I know now, I would just share some of those things. And
yeah,
I can't think of specific things that those might be.
Well, everything just worked out. That's why you don't have any gaping flaws where instantly you're like, okay, I should warn myself about this, and this. And it's funny, having interviewed, about 40 people now, their answers are all different. And some people say, I wouldn't say anything because me saying something might change the course of my life. And I wouldn't be here now doing what I'm doing. And I needed those hard times and I had to learn those lessons myself. And, sometimes, I've had people that are, very in tune with how they feel. And they just say, little baby Joelle, you are loved, you are worthy. Everyone kind of has the different answers.
Yeah.
In your case, there's just no glaring, thing that needed to be corrected. That's all.
No, I just think it's kind of like I would have advice to myself on how I could do it better. But yeah, like things you mentioned as well. I think that all of those things are things that could be a good reminder, just a good boost, just a good morale boost.